Hello everyone, welcome back to Road Reg. So on today's video, you have just bought yourself an M140i and you want to modify it, but you've only got £1,100 to do so. So what I'm going to do in this video is help you decide what mods you should do within that budget and why. So let's crack on with the video. So you've just bought yourself an M140i and you've saved up £1,100 of your hard-earned cash, and you want to make some modifications to it. You want to just sweeten it a little bit, you know? And that's fine, but it can be a little bit confusing if you've not been in the M140i game, you know? And that's totally understandable. Before I bought this car, I did a lot of research on the car and watched a ton of videos on everything to do with a stock M140i to a heavily modified M140i, so it's okay not to know. And that's why I'm here today, to help you decide what you can spend on with that £1,100 to make this car that little bit better. Now the thing is about the M140i is it is slightly compromised out the factory, and that is simply down to the fact that it isn't a full-on M car. This car sits in between a series car and an M car. Okay, so it's in the middle, it's an M performance car, and the simple fact is BMW, to keep costs down, had to save some of the goodies for the full-on M cars. But no worries about that, because this car responds really, really well to modifications. And I know that we've only talked about £1,100 here, but if in the future you save up some more, there is much more that you can do to this car. So it doesn't just end here, okay? But anyway, we are talking about £1,100, and we need to talk about the first modification that you're going to fit to this car. And I'm not going to include labour prices, and that is simply because garages vary in their labour prices. You might have a mate who would do it for you for mates rates, or you might be mechanically minded and have all the tools at home, and you might be a bit of a driveway mechanic, and some of the stuff you can do on the driveway. So I'm not gonna, to keep things simple, I'm not going to include garage prices. We're just going to talk about the cost of the parts within the £1,100 bracket. So the first modification I think you should do is the Bilstein B8 dampers and IBAC springs. Now that's going to set you back a hefty chunk of that £1,100, but in my opinion, it is the most important thing you can do to this car to improve the handling. Now the thing is, guys, the stock dampers on the M140i, they're not that great, okay? It's a little bit too stiffly sprung, and the rebound is too quick, okay? So you do get a bit of a bouncy, jittery ride, especially so when you're pushing on. So the first modification, Bilstein B8 dampers and IBAC springs, okay? The second modification is going to be the underbody brace. So this is basically an X-brace that sits underneath the car. Now, it's an interesting one because BMW used to fit this, I believe, to the 5-door M140i's pre-LCI, and it gets fitted to the M240i's as standard. But in the LCI models, they actually removed it for some reason. I don't know why. I don't know if that's to make the 1 Series feel not as good, not as sorted as the M240i, because obviously this is a 1 Series and the 2 Series is just above the 1 Series. You know how it goes. You've got your 1 Series, you've got your 2 Series, 3 Series, 4 Series, 5 Series, 6 Series, 7 Series, and even 8 Series. And obviously the 8 Series is the top of the crop, right? So I guess BMW wanted to have a sort of difference between the 1 Series and 2 Series, and that's why they removed that X-brace. So essentially that rear X-brace just stiffens up the chassis a little bit more and makes it a bit more rigid, and you really do feel that, because this car never had one and I retrofitted it, and the difference That was actually the second modification I did to this car. I did my modifications in a slightly weird way. The first modification I did was the exhaust, and I was just desperate to unleash some sound out of the B58 because it's such a nice sounding engine. Unfortunately, stock, it's just too quiet, but we're going to get to that in a minute because there is a nice little solution that's going to fit in that budget, okay? So, the X-Brace. So that X-Brace is going to tighten up the chassis, and it's a fairly simple procedure to get it fitted. It's not a big job, but that's going to set you back about £170. And there's a fair few companies that are distributing that now. But that's actually a B&W OEM part, okay? So we've got the Bilstein B8 dampers at £700. We've got the underbody brace at about 170, and we've got a little bit of change left. What do we do with that change? We've done the handling modifications, okay? What I recommend is you get a res delete, okay? That's gonna set you back about £130, okay? And it literally just deletes one of the resonators on this car. Now, the M140i from factory has 2 resonators. If you have an OPF model, it has 2 resonators, a catalytic converter, and the GPF filter. So if you have got a GPF M140i, just double check that you can fit that to the car without it showing any codes, because I'm running the pre-OPF M140i, so I'm not quite sure if having a resonator delete on an OPF car would cause any problems. I don't think it will, but just double check that. But we're talking about a pre-OPF M140i. So a resonator delete is going to bring out some sound of that B58. And the nice thing is, it's going to still look stock. You'll still be using the rear exhaust back box. So you literally just chop out that resonator and replace it with that pipe and get your mechanic to clamp it on or weld it on. It's a fairly simple process, but it's a really cheap way to get some more sound out of the B58, okay? So those 3 modifications fit in to that £1,100 category, and I'll tell you what, they are going to make a huge difference to the M140i. You know, you've sorted out the handling and you've added a little bit more drama to the car. Right, so to summarise, you've got your £1,100. You're going to grab yourself some Bilstein B8 dampers to really improve that ride control and comfort of the M140i. And then you're going to get the B&W underbody brace, the retrofit, because that is going to make a big difference in terms of stiffening up the chassis. And then if you come round to the back, the single res delete, so you can get that little bit closer to sounding like this. Thank you so much for watching the video today, guys. I hope that's helped you decide what you're going to do with your first modifications within that budget. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So take care. See you soon.